my name is Justin, and I'm the returning officer in this MUSA 2025 general elections. So thank you so much for joining us for this debate session for the MUISS Engagement. This debate serves as a platform to encourage open dialogue and interactions between you and your candidates. So we hope that just a few reminders for those joining us either in person or via the YouTube Live. Let's keep this session professional, respectful, and inclusive. So please refrain from raising any overly sensitive topics or personal issues. Just a brief rundown on what the format will be. We will first start with the opening statements by the candidates, followed by the structured debate segment led by the existing office bearer, and then we'll proceed with the live Q&A from the audience or the YouTube Live, and then the candidates will close with their closing remarks. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our candidates for their opening remarks. So Alishba and Redha.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to begin by thanking the returning officer, the MUISS office bearers, and all the students here and watching online for taking the time to be part of this debate. I'm Alishba Khan. I'm a student in the School of Business who's had the opportunity to serve across multiple student bodies, from MUISS and MUVP to the Blockchain Club, where I learned how important it is to keep things running like clockwork, from people to planning to putting it all together.
And my name is Veda Palla, also from the School of Business. Through my roles in MUISS, MHA, student council roles in school, and formal leadership and support training, I've learned the art of communication, empathy, and strategy on top of my strengths with creativity.
Having both served in the MUISS Engagement Subcommittee, we've seen firsthand what it takes to run successful events, from conception to execution, and we're ready to build on that foundation with a clear vision on our leadership and initiatives.
And at the heart of it all, we're all in this together. Every student should feel seen, heard, and included. With clear communication and open feedback channels, we'll make sure your voice directly guides what MUISS does next.
This is because MUISS is the anchor of the international student experience. It's a space where every culture, story, and voice finds a place to belong.
Our vision brings it all together, events that are worth your time, experiences that reignite student spirit and make you feel at home, topped off with initiatives anchored by your needs.
So let's make a deal. You support us in our journey to support you. More than just a title or a pretty manifesto, we both genuinely come here wanting to enrich your student experience. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. So now I'd like to hand over the session to the existing office bearer for the structured debate segment.
All right, testing 1 2 1 2. Okay, once again, congratulations, Vedha and Elishba, for making your way up all to the stage, the debate stage. I've been here last year as well. Now seeing you growing into the person that you've become today, I'm very proud of you. So now I'll start with my questions. I'll start with a general question first. For number one, can you explain what's your long-term vision for the engagement department, and how do you see its role evolving within MUISS in the next year?
So we already like what engagement is doing so far. What we would want to do is enhance it more and focus a bit more on the welfare aspects as well, because as MUISS, that is one of our key responsibilities. So some of our initiatives go about, first of all, enhancing the events that we have, and we also want to focus on bringing new initiatives that support the well-being of students on top of having fun and engaging events. So for foreign exchange students, for instance, we don't have anything in particular for them, so we would maybe want to bring something to help them out as well. And Alishba.
So it's for foreign exchange students, and for current students as well, we want to enrich their experience. So we have initiatives entailed just for bonding within them and communication channels to cater to their needs. So those are part of the new initiatives. And as to answer your question, the long-term goal is to enhance welfare and keep engagement's legacy going.
All right, now let me ask a follow-up question to that, just to give a more detailed one. So what new initiatives actually or creative event ideas would you introduce to strengthen MUISS engagement's impact and also the welfare aspect and also attract more students for your term?
All right. So we've promised a lot of things. We've said that we'll revive student spirit and uphold welfare. So we've made sure these are backed up by actual initiatives. The first one we had, as I mentioned, a bonding event, which is called Night Under the Stars. It's the whole idea is we go beyond just games, and although that's very necessary and helps with mingling, we want to create a lasting bond between students. So Night Under the Stars is basically a mingling event that's centered towards that. Secondly, what Veda mentioned, the foreign exchange student bonding. You want to cover that?
Yeah, so for this, we might collaborate with welfare, but in general, we just want to have at least one event or initiative that we can do to help foreign exchange students feel at home as well. And our final initiative for now is called Ground Up. So we know that IBP exists, like the International Student Buddy Program. But what we discovered with that is that more than mingling with students, it serves as like a communication channel for students to communicate with their seniors and get their questions answered. So we would want like a more organized version of that, where we can have group chats based on specific needs. Like School of Business can be one group chat, and then we can have a section for like vegetarian students, for example, Muslim students, Hindu students. So in this way, they can directly connect with their seniors, and they also have the contact of all of their peers. So as a new student starting off, you're not left in the blind side of things.
So yeah, just on that, it's not a means to divide them rather than to cater to their needs, because we want to uphold, since we're promising welfare, we actually have to ensure that it's delivered. So these are the initiatives we plan to keep welfare going.
All right, those are great initiatives. I think those can work very well. I just want to ask a few follow-up to that. So you said you would want to engage more with the foreign exchange students, correct? Now, this type of aspect or section would need you to collab with the CRO department as well. So could you explain further on that? And my second question would be, how will you implement that IBP system, as you will need to work with the secretary division? And since you guys will want more detailed section of each groups, what then becomes the difference from the school chats or the School of Business, School of Science chats that they already have individually?
To answer the second part of your question, we basically want to act as a mediating channel. So we won't be directly answering all of their questions. We will instead provide them like the correct links to go to. So for instance, if they have a question about School of Business, we can answer their question by talking to the School of Business representative, or we could in fact collaborate with the representatives themselves and make this initiative come to life. So all we want to do is serve as a mediator to make things more streamlined and easier for a student to access. Because Monash already has a lot of services. If you look in the right place, everything you need is there, but we want to act as like the meddling pot of all of that. We want to make it easy for them to access. So that's the answer for that.
As for your first question, yes, it could entail a very possible collaboration with the CRO department. And as MUISS subcommittee, we've seen that happen and seen how it works. So we believe that we can do that very smoothly. And since it's to do with foreign exchange students, that could be a new territory for us to explore. But I think with our collaboration, we can definitely make it happen.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I'm definitely an advocate of those two initiatives. Now, on the topic of collaboration, I would like to ask another question. So, as you may know, this year, is marked as a year in which MUISS has done a lot of collaboration, such as Grand Star, Holy, even the weekly IMF, and of course, the most recently Monash Glow. So I want to ask, number one, what are your views on conducting existing or more collaboration in your term? And number two, how would you tread through these collaborations, knowing that there are a lot of parties involved, but you also need to uphold the reputation of MUISS?
All right, so like you've mentioned, this year we've seen a lot of collaborations. We've witnessed it as well. And we believe that, firstly, fostering good relationships with everyone, it's important to be diplomatic because there are a lot of parties and we're representing MUISS. So I think fostering good relationships, making sure there's clear communication. And since there's a lot of parties, there can be a very long bureaucratic process and there can be a lot of getting lost in translation. But we want to ensure that doesn't happen since it could lead to future problems. So upholding that clear communication and just where our willingness to work with other parties is something we've discussed and we're excited for. So to answer your first question, our views on keeping that, we're very open to that and are looking forward to as many or even more collaborations since it enriches our events and that's what we're promising.
Just to add on further on the events themselves, Grand Iftar, for instance, we want to be more of like a non-biased supporting party. So if there's any community, for example, Holi, if there's any community already doing an event, rather than doing it ourselves, we would prefer to collaborate and support them in doing it. And the way we're having our management style is to have very detailed logistical plans and plan everything out in advance. So there's no communication gap. Even if someone has no background or prior knowledge to something, if they just go through the documents, they can clearly see what is required to be done. So we want to do everything in advance. All of the technicalities, we want to sort them out at least 7 working days before the actual event. So we're leaving a lot of buffer time in case there's error, and we're making sure there's very clear, streamlined communication between parties. And as Alishba mentioned, we would like to have friendly relationships.
Visions, have 5 divisions, is for all of the division to work together, streamlined and closely to each other to also monitor each progress. However, the fact of this master file, there's a lot of faults in it as number one, dates can easily be misled or dates can easily be bypassed. Number two, sometimes people complain the fact that these master files are not accessible or you have to go through a million other files just to find them. So as the engagement division, this is a very important supporting document for you and your logistical planning as well. So how would you implement that streamlined communication that you've mentioned with these existing systems as well?
All right, so firstly, we're grateful that the system was introduced in the first place. It makes things a lot easier for us. But as for the 2 faults you mentioned, firstly, dates can be bypassed, and sometimes we know there's a tracker, but no one's really looking at the tracker because we have a lot to manage. So something we discussed and wanted to introduce for events is for every event that engagement is a part of, we both will, of course, be PICs if we're OBs, but one person will be dedicated to handling all the deadlines, all the tasks, and they have the responsibility to ensure that they're done on time. So, of course, our job is to do the tasks, but one of us for each event will be assigned to ensure the tasks are being done. So that's something that will help the first fault. The second, to ensure accessibility and clear communication, that is something that can be dealt very easily on an administrative level. Admittedly, it gets confusing because there's a lot of things to keep track of. But I think especially if we're collaborating with other parties, we'll make sure issues like that are sorted since it could, a small change or us being cautious with that one thing could prevent a lot of future problems. So I think something like that is something we'll ensure we take care of.
To add on to that, we know that there are already finance trackers, but just for our department itself, we would want to make our own tracker to keep track of all of the receipts and everything. And the PIC for every event, they will be in charge of making sure that we're actually following up on everything. We're checking with the other departments that we're collaborating with. So despite there already being a system, we will still take responsibility to making sure that our end is taken care of and we're being in communication with all of the collaborators as well.
All right, I really like the initiative, especially the deadline initiative. So I would like to ask one last follow-up question before I switch with the current OB. So let's say even if they finish within that timeline, let's say 7 weeks, how do you ensure that all of the subcoms have completed their tasks? And if not, how would you push communicating that problem to them that the delay has been brought? Because yes, in a sense, you can always remind them, but sometimes they brush it off or sometimes they get drowned in a million of messages that they already have. So how would you ensure and approach that communication to them and address that problem?
So one of our management initiatives was to assign them tasks based on their strengths and to make sure that the workload is even for everyone. So, for instance, if someone finds it easier to do creative work, making them do the finances might make it seem like a burdensome workload for them. But for someone else, it seems easy. So, we will look at our subcoms and give them works according to their strengths and weaknesses and make sure there's fair allocation. And we also had an initiative, for example, dry runs. We want to give, we don't want to waste anyone's time. So when they show up, we'll tell them exactly what needs to be done. And after they're done with that, they're free to leave as well, aside from the briefing, of course. So we'll ensure that everything is clearly communicated so they know exactly what their tasks are. It plays to their strengths, so it doesn't seem like a burdensome workload on them. And we'll keep checking in with them to see how they are doing as well. So if they feel overburdened by assignments or they feel like it's unfair, we'll take that into consideration and give them the right amount of workload. By an unfortunate event of all of them not being able to show up, we as PICs, even if it's burdensome on us, we would show up for them. But overall, we would try to prevent the situation from happening by making sure that they're okay as well.
All right, great answer. I'm very satisfied with that. All the best to you guys. Now I will switch over to the current OB, Nyama.
Hello everyone, I am Nyama, the current OB. Nice to meet you guys. I will continue asking the rest of the questions. How we're going to go on is I will first ask you some generic questions regarding the engagement committee, and then I will move on to some scenario-specific questions to see how you guys would deal with conflict. All right, so firstly, this is a very big question because as MUISS Engagement, you will be liaising with not just your subcoms, you will also be liaising with student life, external vendors, and everything that comes alongside creating events. So in terms of that, how would you manage conflict within your department with your subcommittee members and also externally? Let's say you want to have an international games night and student life is not cooperative with you. How would you go on in terms of conflict management with your subcommittee internally and with external liaisons as well?
I want to answer first one, I answer second. Which one is this? First one is subcom, second is student life. Do you want student life or subcom? Student life.
As for our subcoms, we believe that if they have any reason to have conflict, they have a valid reason behind that. So instead of like saying, oh, our position is higher or anything, we would first sit down with them and try to understand the root cause of it. So if we feel like they have valid concerns, then we would address them and take it into account. But a few decisions that we might make as OBs are not all in our control. So if there's something we cannot change within our power, we will have to transparently let them know that this is the current situation, this is the best we could have done. We hope for your understanding and cooperation as well. In the case where it's not done in a professional manner, we would sit them down after understanding where they're coming from. We would also initiate like a verbal warning maybe that this behavior is inappropriate and we hope for more friendly atmosphere in general. But overall, we would try to understand where they're coming from and actually take into account what they're saying.
All right, for your second question to do with student life, I believe that could be more complicated because it's to do with something external and it feels like you're against Monash and you feel like just a student on your own. But I think there's two sides of the coin. Firstly, their feedback could be very valid in the sense they raise a genuine concern, such as, for example, for Monash Glow. I remember we got a feedback that initially we were planning a bazaar. However, they suggested that wouldn't be the best possibility. And in that case, I believe they were right to do so. So in such cases, we can take it as constructive feedback and try to actually implement it in the sense it would be better for our event as well as for their side. However, on the other side of the coin, we know that at certain points we will have initiatives and we will have to fight for them. So they might raise certain concerns and it's important to understand and try to solve them, but we will ensure that if we believe an initiative works and it's better for our department and it upholds our manifesto, we will try to solve their concerns and really fight for our idea. So as long as that's done in a diplomatic way, we will learn to deal with external parties.
All right, I think that's a very good answer. I just have a slight follow-up to that. So when you say that we will try to resolve, right? In terms of, let's say, not just student life or an external vendor where you will have to fight for certain things, right? In terms of that fighting, how would conflict resolution come out? Because conflict resolution would always be our top priority, irrespective of whatever. So in terms of that, how would you try to resolute? Would that come in terms of a sacrifice from your side, or working with other departments to make it work? What would be certain initiatives you would take to resolute the conflicts that you might have with external license?
Is this question specific to student life or
This is
external life?
specific to external license in general. I can give you an example. Like, let's say for Jomkel, which we do every semester, one of the biggest issues we had run into, which we are still, we have been working in terms of resolving that, which is the bus vendor that we have. What issue we had run into with the bus vendor was the timings were a problem. Things got complicated from their side. Things got complicated from our side. In a situation like that, how would you? What are some of the things that you would try to resolute? What are some of the solutions that you would try to come up with on your own? Since you will be the ones contacting the vendors will be holding you liable to any sort of issue. They will not be contacting Monash or Student Life. So in terms of that, how will you deal with that, and how will you try to resolute the conflict that you have with them?
I'm not entirely sure if I have the details understood, but for a general answer, I think, first of all, in all of the official documents, we would ensure that Monash is written. So if anything comes unreasonably, we could just say that we have tried our best in our capacity to handle the situation, but it's inappropriate for you to like hold it against us when it is not our, like, it's not in our domain of control. And we would try to find out the next best solution for a bad situation. So we would understand where their concerns are coming from. We would understand the root cause of the problem. And in our control, based on whatever we could do, even if it means compromising a little bit, for the sake of peace, we could try to find like the next best solution. But in any situation, if the vendor is being very unreasonable or it's not okay, then we would have to just tell them that we cannot do anything beyond this point. We have tried our best, but beyond this, it's not in our control. And we hope you understand that. And we would try to talk to Student Life and get their support as well and try to figure out the solution.
All right, that's a very good answer. I'll move on to the next question, which is, as engagement heads, you two will be co-heads. During this year as well, we had co-heads, which were Saad and I. One of the biggest things we did in the beginning of this semester was structure our department. So as you guys have two heads, how would the working dynamic be between you two, and how will responsibilities be divided to ensure that both of you contribute equally and effectively?
All right, so this is something we've discussed priorly. We want to ensure we both play to our strengths while also balancing our weaknesses so nobody is burdened. We've taken up the fact that firstly, we will try to be PICs for each event, and as the initiative I mentioned earlier, one of the heads will be accountable for all the tasks and deadlines. And within each event itself, we will try to make sure that we have an, as I mentioned earlier, even balance of our strengths and weaknesses. So if there's something I know Veda is good at, we will allocate her specifically to that, and vice versa. Whereas if there's something we're both dreading, we'll try to maybe split it evenly so we don't have to, dread the process. So I think within ourselves, we've really discussed and figured out that we want to balance it as well as possible so that nobody feels burdened. And for our department itself, like you mentioned, you structured it at the beginning, and we'll, do the same. With our subcom initiatives and everything, we've ensured that the same goes for our subcoms. They play to their strengths and weaknesses. They are not overburdened, and they really feel like connected to the department.
Just to add on to that, while we're ensuring everyone plays to their strengths and weaknesses, we also don't want to limit them to a specific task. So we will be circling them around. It's just, in general, we would try to give them exposure, but also ensure that they're not feeling overwhelmed. And as for us, if there is any point of conflict, we would still show as a united front. So nobody would really know what's going on because that's a personal conflict. We don't want to bring that to work. And despite, like, for example, if Alishba is PIC for one event, we both, before any event, would prior talk about our vision in like extreme detail, and we both would be on board with what's going on. So even if something happens suddenly, if a subcom comes to me, I still know what's going on because I'm keeping track of everything with her. She's just in charge of ensuring everything is working okay. So we both will always be aligned in our vision, and anyone can communicate to us, and we would be aligned.
All right, that's great answers. I just have two follow-ups to that. Follow-up number one would be, since you specifically mentioned that you would be playing at your strengths, what happens in terms of a scenario? So, with my own experience as the head of MUISS Engagement this year, I have overtaken a lot of responsibilities that I had not prior to assuming this position. So, in a scenario where neither of you know what to do, both of you do not have the strength since you lack the experience, how would you go on in terms of that? And secondly, I believe we had this problem within our department during the semester one, where both of you were having to work on the logistical team for a while. So when that happens, for an entire year, when your team is working with you, you give them to play best at their strength at a long time. Do you not think that there could be a possibility that they get bored or they lose their interest in that? So, in terms of that, how would you work to cultivate their skills and further hone them as individuals under your wing? And the first question was that if it's not at your strength, what will you do?
All right, for your first question, we really understand that a lot of the things are very on the job training. We know that some things we will not know about event logistics or technicalities. That's not something a student knows until they have to enter and plan the logistics. So that's something we're mentally prepared for. And in my previous answer, as I mentioned, when we don't know how to do a thing or when we know it's our weakness, we'll try to do it together and figure it out together. So we're on the same page and we can help each other. And I believe that just because we don't know it doesn't mean we can't be good at it. So I feel like as the process goes on and with every event one by one, I think it's something we can learn.
Just to add on to her answer as well, we've actually discussed our weaknesses more than our strengths prior to like planning everything out. So we are very self-aware of where we're lacking, and we also have discussed how to bridge the gap. And we wouldn't be here if we weren't confident about our abilities. So on the job, it might be hard for us, but we will persevere and try our best to make it work out. And for our subcom, we'll try our best to appear calm and collected despite whatever is going on, because they need like a leadership that they can rely on. And to answer your second question, as I previously mentioned, despite the subcoms playing to their strengths and not their weaknesses as much, we would ensure that they're rotating around. So, for example, if someone is better at planning logistics, we would still make sure that they experience what it's like to be on the ground and work as well. So we would like rotate roles, but for a new event, for example, like one of our initiatives, Night Under the Stars, we wouldn't want to take the risk as much, so we would make sure they play to their strengths. But for events like IGN, for example, which happen multiple times a year, we would make sure that everyone has had the opportunity to experience every role, and we will guide them and support them if they're struggling a little bit.
All right, that sounds great. Okay, moving on to my next question. Over the past year, we have garnered over 150 to 200 plus attendees for each event. Prior to this year, that was quite unachievable. And we were able to do it. Saad and I had put in a lot of our heart and soul into achieving that. So as for you guys, how would you go on to sustain the rapport that we have built up or even grow to this level of participation next year for your events?
So you and Saad have done an amazing job. One of the things we would want to, I guess, enhance is making sure that we are on board with media way before anything happens, and we would want to like push out more media content for any event. Media has done an amazing job this year as well, but I think we would want more promotion than usual, and we would also try to keep up the good relationship with Student Life, and we would try to get them on board for most of our events so that they can sponsor perhaps a part of it, because I think we have a record international student intake this year as well, and I think it'll only grow going forward. So we would try to, like get the support of Student Life and make sure that our events are bigger and better quality and they're promoted better than before.
Just to add on to that, one more thing we've focused on is we will see what worked and implement that as well. Since our big sell is tickets worth your money and create events, I think we'd like to sustain that promise. We would like to analyze what went well in each event and bring that and try to analyze why that thing works so we can find the root cause of it and repeat that. And for example, if one game at IGN was a big hit, we'll try to understand why did people like it and how can we make games more like that. And even just generally to enhance quality of our events, we've discussed that we'd like to bring spirits of competitiveness, bring incentivizing. Such things will motivate students more, and if the participation for one event is good, that will, through word of mouth, enhance future events. So I think just upkeeping event quality is our priority.
Just to add another example, for instance, Glow was a really good event this year. The way we would perhaps enhance that is try to find out what students like in general. So we would change the theme to fit what students enjoy more, and we would try to play to what they would like so that events are for the students. It's not just an event. And we would want to make them feel more enrolled in the event itself. So rather than attending an event with incentives and competition, they would feel like they're part of the event rather than just attending it.
Okay, just a follow-up to that. So one thing you mentioned is you try to create events that students like. That was also one of our biggest priority this year. But one big problem that comes with it is how do you find out what students like? So in terms of that, what initiatives would you take to take feedback from the students, or to when you are creating something new, how would you even find out what excites?
All right, so we've discussed this, and we did want to bring few new things to ensure we know what students like. Firstly, we already have a system where post an event, we put down all the feedback, see what worked, what didn't. So we'll ensure we have the same document and it's implemented to every logistical plan so that while planning, we know what worked out last time and what didn't, and we plan according to that. Secondly, we already have feedback forms, but we could incentivize those as well, since for the average student, filling a feedback form on an event, it might feel like a burdensome task, but we could put in like people that fill it in, one in that many could get like a voucher or small incentives to ensure that those are actually filled, because more responses, we will have more data to work with. And lastly, what we mentioned, just seeing what worked in each event and trying to find the root cause of it so we can understand why it worked.
Okay, that's actually, do you want to?
Yeah. Just to add on to that, in all of our logistical plans as well, I think we have event epilogues. I don't know if we've done them for all the events, but the ones that we do have, we would want to streamline all of that information into a particular document, just called maybe event epilogues, where we would write down what worked, what did not work, so that in the future events, it's very easy to see where we went wrong, where we went right, and we'll plan according to that.
All right, that's a great answer. However, I think the thing that Veda just said, that works internally, right? Even this year, we've had feedback forms. We've also tried to get students to fill up those feedback forms with incentives per se. These are all pre-existing initiatives currently, right? So, firstly, grab voucher finance cost is not something you let's say hypothetically we are not able to justify it, then the financial incentive goes away where they're able to achieve something, and the feedback form is currently a current initiative. So what is a new initiative you would take to garner the not just particularly feedback is much, it comes after an event where they tell you how their experience within the event was. How would let's say this year, Saad and I, when we organized Glow, we knew that everybody on campus would have enjoyed a DJ party because we had also personally spoken to people. So in terms of that, what new initiatives would you take to ensure that, students, whatever event you're creating would be something that would excite, not past initiatives such as feedback forms, which come post events, current initiatives, new initiatives that you would like to take?
So this is not officially discussed between us, but some idea that we had vaguely was to kind of, prior to an event, find a way to connect with students, like maybe a poll that they can answer on like what they would like, what is their favorite type of music, and things like that. We still haven't figured out the details of it, but we would want to create like maybe an Instagram page or some communication channel between engagement and students directly, so that we can ask them questions about an event. We can ask them like what kind of event would you like next, what kind of music do you enjoy, things like that. And even during the event, I know we already have it, but we would try to find maybe new ways to incentivize students to like give their feedback, maybe write it down somewhere. And grab vouchers, for instance, right? Maybe we will look for alternatives that students might want as well. That doesn't have to be as much of a financial issue. So we would brainstorm a bit more, but we would try to find ways before the event as well to get students to interact and even after.
All right, this is the last generic question I have. After that, I'll move on to the situation based. On the day of event, let's say your co-head becomes extremely anxious or experiences a burnout the day before a major event. What steps would you individually take to ensure that the event still runs smoothly while also supporting your co-head's well-being, because the event cannot run without both of the PICs smoothly? So how would you ensure both your co-head's well-being and that you individually are able to, as one individual, take the whole responsibility of the event?
All right. So, firstly, we try to, of course, this is a scenario that could be possible, I think, but we try to avoid it altogether. In the sense, as we mentioned before, we try to have all the preparation for an event done 7 days, working days prior, so that we prevent something like this, because it's very much possible to get burnt out. So I think just preparing early, I think, would prevent this. And secondly, if it does happen, I think firstly just being there for each other, because at the end of the day, one thing we've discussed is regardless of what happens, and we put a united front, but we will be there for each other. And so we'll just try to support the other person, and try to kind of analyze the reason for the burnout, if there was a triggering point or a conflict that led to it. So we would try to resolve that, because that itself could resolve the burnout or feelings of frustration. So I think in that sense, we'll be there for each other. For the event itself, since we will have planned logistically very meticulously what we're doing, and we have our subcom and other team to support us, I believe the event would still go very smoothly, because we'll never try to put ourselves in the position where the entire event is dependent only on us. Of course, we'll show up where we need to, but I think with the way we've discussed, we want to have an event like so well planned that it doesn't have to be dependent D-Day on one person. I think that's a very compromising situation. Um,
Just to add on to that, because, like, for example, if she's PIC for one event, she might have a bit more experience directly talking to the people, but I will still be in the loop with everything that's going on. So, for whatever reason, if she cannot show up as well, I would know exactly what to do, what to take care of, who to talk to, and I could show up on her behalf. And it might be a little bit burdensome on both of us once in a while, but we're willing to do that for the team. And just personally, between us, we have a really good friendship and understanding of each other. So if one of us is feeling burnt out or not okay, we would know what's going on, and we would know the best way to emotionally support them or try to help out and fill in on their behalf. So, yeah.
All right, that's a great answer. Let's move on to the scenario based. I'll ask you max 2 to 3. I don't want to ask you that many. Okay, let's say that when working, you want to create an event proposal. However, while you're working on the event proposal, the MUISS head says that it does not align with the vision of MUISS. However, you've already secured vendors and promotions. How do you handle this professionally without losing morale, authority, or image?
All right, so I think what comes first for us in the event planning process while brainstorming is the vision. We want to make sure that first me and her vision are on the same page, because we're very specific about this. So that's something we've kept in mind that we will have conflict on, which is why we've placed more importance on it. So something like vision, it's very important to us. And especially with our MUISS heads, we know that we might just be thinking for our department, but they are thinking in terms of MUISS, which is something we need to understand. So I think we will ensure that we're on the same page with them earlier. However, if there are vendors secured and all of that, I think firstly,
So to add on to what Alishba said, the fact that last minute our vision would be misaligned would likely not happen. So if that ever did happen, we would try to really understand what is their reasoning behind it, and we would push for it, because they had also been enrolled with our vision initially, and we have communicated everything. So it would be a bit unfair to last minute pull away without any valid reason. So depending on how valid the reason is, we would try to mitigate it. Like we would try to come to a consensus where maybe if we compromise on this and that, we can still make it work. So we would not just stop it because they have a higher authority than us. We would still push for it because everyone has put in effort. We have already done everything for it, and we've had clear communication. And if their reason is truly valid and we also understand exactly where they're coming from, we would definitely try to find middle ground and still push for it, or try to find ways to adjust, to cater to it.
All right, that's I have a follow-up to that. Since you're saying that you'll push for it, okay? Since even though you will be office bearers, ultimately you will be answerable to the MUISS and MUSA heads. Let's say at a point you do want to push for it and they have zero valid reasons to deny it, and you still push for it. How will you manage that? You pushing for it will not particularly guarantee that, let's say you have made payments, your vendor payments. If your MUISS head says no, the PRPO or the EC will not get approved. So even if you push for it, how will you push for it? How will you ensure that financially it gets approved? If the MUISS head disagrees, then the MUSA head disagrees, and as does the venues, you don't get any of your venues. So in that scenario, let's say you have your vendors ready, you have your promotions ready. However, your locations, your finances, everything is out of your control. In a scenario like that, how would you push for it, or would you even push for it, or how would you move forward with it?
All right. So, firstly, if there is such strong denial from their side, we try to understand where it's coming from, because they cannot limit us so much unless they have a valid reason. So, firstly, we'd like to try to figure that out and solve that, and see why they're not aligning with our vision, if there's a fault in our vision, because it could be very valid constructive feedback. Sometimes there could be chances where we're unrealistic or too idealistic. So we try to see if it's something we can work around, something that maybe if we are pushing for it, should we not push for it, if it's something we should compromise on. However, if we believe it's not something we should change, we'll try to solve, or rather convince them why we're doing what we're doing and how it'll benefit the event and student life, since that's what, regardless of engagement or MUISS or MUSA, we all have a shared goal. So if we're pushing for something towards that shared goal, there's no reason for them to deny it. However, if it's something that limits the event altogether with locations and restrictions as such, their vision cannot be so far off from ours. So keeping that in mind, if it limits the entirety of our event, we'll have no choice but to compromise. We understand that's something that is part of the process. So it's not like we'll deliver an event we're not happy with. Under no circumstance will that happen. But if at the end of the day we want to deliver the event, we have to understand that sometimes our vision cannot be 280. It can be 90% of what we imagine, and sometimes that's okay as long as it achieves our goal.
All right, just to follow up to that. So I think, me personally, I think that's a very internal thing to work out, right? Where you're having to sacrifice on your vision. But on the other end, where, as I've said, that you've already secured vendors and promotions, right? How do you handle that professionally without losing, first of all, morale within the subcommittee? Secondly, authority as in your position as an office bearer. And thirdly, your image, where when you do contact a vendor, you are a representative of MUISS. The next time the vendor will be working with you, if that is what your image were to grow to, they would not be willing to work with you. So in terms of that, internally, I believe at every given point, you will have to sacrifice, because that's just how it is. You'll have to make changes. Saad and I have had to make more sacrifices than initiatives over the year. However, externally, when it comes to your vendors, how do you make sure that your image is not harmed, your authority is not lost, and your morale within the team and is not lost? Your subcommittee members don't tell you that, oh, we don't have that faith in you. How do you not lose that?
I think we'll take one by one. So morale, authority, and
Image.
yeah. All right, you can start with morale.
So to keep up the morale, if there's genuinely nothing that can be done and we have no choice but to maybe drop the event or compromise heavily on it, we would have to be transparent and let them know what's going on. We don't know the details of the situation, but if there's for any reason we're not allowed to tell them exactly what's going on, we will still let them know that we tried our absolute best because we believed in this vision and we think they did a really good job. But things are out of our control sometimes, and there was nothing we could have done. And we truly did try to push for it as much as we could. So in that case, we would just be transparent and let them know that there's a situation we don't have control over, and we're really proud of everything that they have done, but there's nothing we can do, even though we really want to. Um, and as for the other departments that we're licensing with, we would do something similar as well, saying that we're really thankful for the effort and work they've put in, and we also are really happy with what they have done. It's just sometimes we don't have control over what happens, and there was really nothing else we could have done. We tried our best to push for it. And Alishba will talk about the vendors.
All right, so for the vendors, like we mentioned earlier, even if there are different visions, they can only be so different for the same event. So given that we've contacted vendors and made payments, we probably have, that's something that's been discussed. So there will not come a situation where we abruptly cancel on a vendor or act unprofessional in any manner. If there is a change, we will communicate that diplomatically, and this time with full discussion to ensure there's no further changes, so that even if there is a slight change, which is something that can happen with a vendor, there's no further conflict, because that could really, as you mentioned, a vendor would not want to work in the future, or a scenario like that could happen. So I think just maintaining our values of being diplomatic, representing Monash and MUISS well, trying not to upset a vendor at the end of the day, and keeping in mind that our vision could not be that different. It's not even, there could be a scenario where we don't even have to change much with the vendor. Of course, this depends on the technicality of the event, but basically, at the end of the day, trying to keep the vendor happy while keeping our event in mind, so that we keep our good relations.
All right, those are great answers, actually. I'll just ask a last question. It'll be a two-part question. Number one, let's say, God forbids, you get, so in event making, well, no matter how successfully you go, there will always be some people who might not like it, right? However, let's say that majority of the people say that, the turnout is not good, the event has failed, there's bad coordination and unhappy students. And also people start calling it the worst MUISS event ever, right? How would you address this publicly and internally within your team without sounding defensive? And at the same time, since one of engagement's initiatives are welfare, how would you navigate students' welfare with the event if it were to go south?
What do you want to say?
I was going to say that how to communicate with everyone and student welfare second.
All right. So I understand this is a scenario question, but this is actually, it's not an if it'll happen, it's when it will happen, because this is bound to happen. You could put the best event ever, but people will still have complaints with it. So that's something we've accepted, and it's part of the process. However, wait, you want to address how we'll navigate that, right? Okay. So it depends. All right, so it could come in different ways. It could be hateful. However, it could also be constructive, just delivered in a bad way. So if there's something students are genuinely unhappy with, or something that we overlooked, even if it's placed badly, we'll learn to accept it, and we'll try to find the actual feedback that lies within it, because it could mean the next event is better and it doesn't get that feedback. And how we'll communicate it in terms of welfare and how we'll say to them.
So for the students in general, publicly addressing it, I don't think has been a requirement per se. It's more of how we'll handle our next event, right? So like Alishba mentioned, even if the comments are hateful or not very kind, we would try to get the underlying feedback within that and work on it for our next event. As for how we'll address our subcoms and unhappy committee members, we would let them know, like, transparently, that this was our vision, this was the process, we did our absolute best. For our subcom, we would genuinely acknowledge all of the good work that they have done and make sure that they feel seen for the amount of effort they've put in. And we will let them know that sometimes not everyone is going to be happy with what you will put out, and all we can do is just try to get better next time. So there's nothing we could have done different because we did not have this knowledge. Now that we do, we won't repeat it again. And similarly, for the committee members that are unhappy, we'll take accountability for our faults, but we would ensure that they know we did put a lot of effort and we tried our best, and we will do even better next time. So I think that's just an unfortunate situation. So there's not much we can do to mitigate that aside from taking accountability and making sure it doesn't happen again.
And sorry, just to follow up to that, the welfare bit, how would you ensure, since it falls under student welfare, falls under MUISS engagement, how would you ensure that, most of the events that you're creating has a long-term welfare goal for students as well? If the feedback from that is, oh, it's the worst event, even within that, how would you ensure that, okay, you are trying to look out for the welfare of students? Or how would you even communicate to them that their welfare is something that is your top priority as well?
All right, so that is a priority of ours, regardless of any feedback from students, whether it's addressed in an unkind way or anything at all. It's in our manifesto, and it's our biggest promise that we'll look out for welfare. That's something that's non-negotiable, and we've ensured there's a part of welfare in every event. That's the main goal. So whether it be like Jom KL or Game Wars, it's mingling. Whether it be our new initiative such as Night Under the Stars, it's emotional bonding. And for foreign exchange students, for clearer communication such as Ground Up, all our initiatives are focused on welfare. So that's a non-negotiable factor regardless of any feedback that comes.
I'm sorry, and this is this last follow-up before I pass it back to Justin. So you were saying that welfare is your first priority. What are some welfare initiatives that you guys want to take? Like, what are some of the particular things you will do in terms of welfare within your events, as that is one of your biggest priorities?
So as we mentioned earlier, we have, I think, 3 new initiatives for now. The first one is Night Under the Stars. We have quite a few mingling events where you have fun with people and it gets over. But we want to also focus on long-lasting connections so people can connect on a deeper level. So Night Under the Stars is going to be an event where people get to talk to each other a bit more. And it'll be, on top of fun, it'll also be an event where you can actually get to know the people you're with. And you'll end up with actual friendships that you can maintain after the event as well. And we also want to have an initiative for foreign exchange students because there's really nothing particularly just for them. So when they come here, they're new in a new country in the middle of their semester. So we really want to make sure that they feel welcome and they don't feel out of place too much. And finally, our last initiative is called Ground Up. So we know that we have IBP where like students can connect with their seniors and get insight that they want. We just want to make that more organized because we want to keep the mingling aspect for mingle events and not try to force 2 things together. So in this case, we would segregate the WhatsApp community perhaps into different sections like business questions, questions on dietary preferences, religious questions, and we would connect them directly to seniors or we would link them to the right resources so they can get all of their questions answered and they also know who else is in that group chat.
All right, those are great answers actually and great initiatives. That is all for me. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming to the debate today. I'll pass it over to Justin, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we would like to now open the session to the floor for Q&A. See if there are no questions from the YouTube Live. Are there any questions?
Hi guys. Okay, so I have a question. So as a CRO subcom this year, I've seen that sometimes the communication lines between CRO and engagement they often have gaps between them. And since CRO and engagement collaborate on a lot of events together, especially starting next year, so the event usually involves dealing with the country reps, which is the CRO department's job. So as the engagement heads or the next engagement heads, how will you ensure that there's a constant line of communication between you and the country reps because you directly do not liaise with them?
I think this has to be a bit more scenario specific. But the reason we would have to be in contact with CRs is because we need to work with them for any particular event or initiative. So we would make sure with our management style that everything is clearly written down and communicated in terms of what it is we want from them, what we need them to do. So the as CRO department, your only job would be as like mediating between us and the CRs. So we would ask you to ask for any concerns or issues they might have, and we would try to address them and make sure that everything is clearly communicated.
Just to add on to hers, since you mentioned CRO as a department has to liaise with the country reps, and it would be like genuine, like realistically speaking, it would be difficult for us as engagement heads to liaise with each country represented CR on their own. So I think as long as we maintain a good communication with CRO as a department itself, since you guys are the middle party, it will be made sure that all needs and all important details are communicated. Because if we try to go to each CR on their own, there will definitely be unmet needs or something will go unheard. So since you guys will do your job correctly and we'll liaise with you, I think it would lead to a fruitful collaboration.
Okay, hi, Lishba. I just have one question for you guys. It's a scenario-based question, and this happens quite often with us. It happened a lot of times this year as well. So let's say you submitted your EMS 2 weeks in advance, but it hasn't been approved. You've already booked everything. All the preparations are done. You guys have announced the event, right? But the deadline is here. You guys cannot do anything. So would you guys go ahead and do the event even though it's not approved? Or will you cancel the event? And if you guys do cancel the event, how do you manage the backlash?
So to answer your question, we would try to have good relations with student life prior to this. So we would try our absolute best to push for EMS approval because like we want this event to happen and we would try to keep good relationships and push for it. But we cannot break procedure. So let's say worst case scenario, despite us trying our absolute best to push for the event, if for some reason it's not getting approved, we cannot break protocol and we have no choice but to cancel it. But we would look for an alternative, like maybe changing the date of the event to a different date, and we would still try to like push for EMS approval and understand what their concerns are and why they don't want to approve the EMS. And we try to address that and maybe change the date if there's no other alternative. So we would try our best to avoid canceling the event, and breaking protocol is like just not going to happen. So yeah.
Just to add on to her answer, I don't know if this is a trick question because I don't think in any scenario will we submit our EMS 2 weeks prior to the event. For example, as you guys set an example, you submitted semester 2 events EMS at the beginning of the year. So that's something we will follow. And we know that after the submission of an EMS, the whole job for student life and the external parties is to bring up concerns that could be valid and something we have to go around. For example, for Grand Iftar, when we worked, they brought up a lot of valid concerns, and that's why it took a lot of time to solve them. So that's something that's part of the process and we have to be ready for. So of course, she answered the actual scenario, but we'll ensure as engagement heads that that scenario does not occur in the first place.
Hello, hi, Alishba. Vedan, very good job on your debate. So I just have one question because you all mentioned on wanting to bring more initiative, and also in your manifesto you mentioned on, let's say, adding on incentive for people to join the events as well. So how are you going to manage the budget? As you know, MUISS as a whole has a very huge budget. However, it's not limited. You still have, let's say, MCA, one word, all those also to think about with and discuss with your head. And for example, this year where some of the performers for MCN, they still had to pay for their to perform actually, so which is something quite has a bit of backlash on lah. So how would you balance the budget without like causing other aspect of other departments and not just your events, without making sure that there's overspending, all those lah?
Recently we've collaborated a lot more with student life. So we would like to keep that good relationship going on, and we would like to collaborate with student life a lot more. So we would try to get them on board for some parts of all of our events to make sure that we don't have to eat up too much of our budget as well. And as for how we'll do the financial planning, we'll do everything beforehand and make sure that it's actually viable before happening. So we would discuss with the heads, the finance department, and everything, and try to ensure that we have allocated a reasonable budget for each event and everything is communicated prior to the actual event occurring. And we would try to work with the constraints that we have. And as for incentives, not all of them have to be expensive. We can also try to look for cheap alternatives or even incentives that don't require any money, like a day with us somewhere, or like we can come up with creative ways to handle the costs of incentives as well. Like maybe you can get a like design on your hand or something like that. So we would try to creatively mitigate these issues and make sure that everything is prior hand communicated and allocated for.
Yeah, good job on the answer. Just a small thing. Getting student life on board, not say it's impossible, is very hard as they have their own budget. And technically, MUSA budget comes under their budget as well. But it's just that they give us the freedom to spend it as well as we choose. It's just that having them to use their own budget with us might not be the long-term solution, as you never know, as if you want them to be involved in all your events, which would be impossible as that would be showing favoritism already. Yeah, just that only.
So to add on to that, we're not saying that that is like our fail-safe approach. We're just saying this is what we would aim. And one of our manifesto points were quality over quantity. So if for any reason we don't have the budget to actually make sure that our events are done well, we would not want to dilute the value of each event and like introduce too many new initiatives. We would try to enhance the ones we already have. But our aim, or at least our goal, is to hopefully make sure we can bring all of our initiatives to life. But if at any point we cannot make that happen with quality, we would not compromise on the quality of our events.
Okay, seeing as there are no more questions, I think we can hand it back to candidates for your closing statement.
So before we close, we want to sincerely thank the returning officer, the MUISS office bearers, and every student who joined us today, both online and offline. Your time and attention mean a lot because everything we've spoken about tonight ultimately revolves around you and the students that MUISS represents.
Our vision has been clear always: engagement with purpose. It's about bringing real value to the international student experience, not through doing more, but through doing better. Our manifesto reflects that commitment, with tickets worth your money, reviving student spirit, being all in this together, and hearing and handling your concerns. These aren't just ideas on paper, they're the foundation for every decision, event, and initiative that we plan to bring to life.
We are committed to crafting distinctive, high-impact events that bring people together and strengthen what it means to belong at Monash. We want to revive that spark on campus and make every student feel like they belong here.
And when we talk about said belonging, if we were to become the MUISS engagement heads, that also applies to our future team, the people who make everything happen behind the scenes. We want to give them the creative freedom to express ideas and experiment while ensuring every member feels valued, supported, and trusted.
At the same time, structure matters, so we will bring efficiency into how the department runs, from clear timelines and transparent communication to better organization and coordination between teams. We believe in a system that allows creativity to flow without any chaos or hassles, where every subcommittee member knows their role and feels proud of their contribution.
On the same note, interdepartmental collaboration will also be a key part of how we work. MUISS thrives when departments share ideas, support each other, and work toward common goals. It's not about separate efforts, but a shared rhythm that makes every initiative of ours stronger.
And to our student body, our main priority will always be the promise that we've made today to uphold our manifesto to consistent action. We'll make sure that feedback is not just collected, it's acted upon and implemented, and we will keep our communication open and our processes transparent. Our focus firmly lies on you.
And at the end of the day, we're not just here for recognition and titles. We're here because we genuinely care deeply about the international student experience. We've seen what MUISS can be at its best, and we're committed to setting that as our standard and sticking by it. Stronger, more connected, and more purposeful than ever.
So, as we end, we simply want to say this. Our journey begins and ends with the students. With your trust, we will continue to build a MUISS that not only represents you but grows with you.
This is our commitment to lead with empathy, to act with intention, and make every student feel at home.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to all candidates, office bearer, and audience for your time and participation. We hope that you found this session insightful and engaging. Before we end, here are some important key dates to remember. The voting period will take place between the 13th of October to the 17th of October 2025, and the vote will take place via the official Monash e-voting platform. More details will also be shared soon. To stay updated, follow us on Instagram and catch the rest of the debates on the MUSA YouTube channel. Thank you once again for being here and have a great day.